Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee, and welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, a lot of soccer to get to on this week's episode. Of course, we are through the first round of group stage fixtures at Euro 2020. I know that there's going to be matches going on during this taping. There's going to be matches going on whenever you get to this episode. We're going to be talking about the first round next week. The group stage will be wrapped up. We'll be able to look at everything there at that point. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this week, what we've seen through that first round of fixtures. Obviously, a lot of soccer going on in this country. A lot of the major leagues are going to be getting back to play here after the international break here this weekend. And, of course, a lot of St. Louis soccer to get to. I was planning on having a guest this week for my 30th episode of Big Guest, but thankfully, it's not been completely shut down. It's just been postponed a little bit. I hope to have that conversation for you all here in the next couple of episodes. But you'll get to hear a lot from some of the local players from the matches that I've been able to attend over this past week. So that's still very exciting and a pretty darn good substitute as well. So again, very excited for this week's episode. As you can see here in the home studio, we're in some St. Louis FC gear, but right behind me, of course, you got Spain jersey, you got the Netherlands jersey, some interesting matchups from those two clubs that I'll be talking about, those two teams here from this past week. But of course, where we have to start off with the show was the news story that just shocked not just the football world, but around the world in general. This was on every news channel, made major news, not just from the country's location, but around the world. We got to talk about Christian Eriksen. Now, before I get into Christian's specific situation, I do want to make this point. I'm sure you all have heard of the phrase before, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. It's a really negative connotation if you think about it. You always want to try to be optimistic about things and how things will play out. Obviously, in an ideal world, you want everything to go right. In sports, winning is not guaranteed. Winning and losing, they come hand in hand. But at the end of the day, there's a certain expectation that at the end of each match, at the end of each game, everyone has gotten through it, everyone is healthy and happy, and you can move on to the next one. We've seen terrible incidents and scenes in sports before over the years, especially when it comes to major injuries. We've seen athletes at the very peak of their physical capabilities all of a sudden just collapse. You never want it to happen. You never really expect it to happen, but it does occur from time to time. And unfortunately, it happened on just the second day of Euro 2020. Everyone probably already knows what went down, but just to set the scene, in the 43rd minute of Denmark's opening match versus Finland, their star midfielder, Christian Eriksen, collapsed on the far side of the field. It was later confirmed that he did go into cardiac arrest, and as players and medical personnel rushed to his aid, his heart did stop. Thankfully, Denmark's captain, Simon Kjær, was there to begin CPR almost immediately. Then medical personnel made it to Christian. They were able to bring him back with the defibrillator. They were eventually able to just amazingly, again, doing this in live time with the whole world watching on TV. And of course, those tens of thousands of fans in the stadium, they were able to revive him. They were able to stabilize him. They were able to get him on that gurney. And by the time that he was wheeled out of that stadium, you saw the pictures, I'm sure, online or on TV, that he was awake and aware, and he had his hand kind of up by his head, and thankfully had kind of, stabilized there just a little bit. The scenes were just incredibly awful to kind of take in. You saw his teammates form a circle around him to give them some privacy, most of which they were in tears. Just heart-wrenching to see. You saw his wife on the sideline, again, not really knowing what was going on. They didn't really allow her to go across the field and to be with her husband. Again, it's just a shocking scene. We've seen sometimes this happen in sports before, but not at a major tournament such as this in the game of soccer. And again, 29 years old, peak fitness, just completely caught everyone off guard, and a terrible situation. But again, thankfully, by the time he was wheeled out, they had stabilized him. The match was suspended for an hour and 45 minutes as players from both teams met with UEFA officials. They held a crisis meeting to determine the next step in the process. The decision was made by players from both teams to continue with the match at that time. They came out, and you could just see, especially on the Denmark players' faces, they were just still in shock, saddened. Still, many had tears in their eyes as they warmed up. Incredibly tough to watch. The match would continue. Finland would take the lead, and they would hold on to that lead for a 1-0 victory. Now, of course, we've had almost a week now to kind of take in what went down that day and the fallout from it. Thankfully, on the positive side, we have seen Christian Eriksen up and alert. He's talked with his teammates. He's talked with his family, posted a viral message on social media saying that he's all right, that he'll be watching Denmark's, next few fixtures from the hospital. And again, just thankfully, the crisis was averted. The main thing here is that Christian is okay, that he's recovering, and he is safe. And that has got to be the biggest takeaway from that. However, on the negative side of things, we've now heard stories the past few days about how this situation was handled by UEFA. We've heard Denmark players come out and say they were only given really 3 choices about the next step in the process. Either resume the match then and there after that little bit of delay, come back the next day and resume the match and finish it out, or forfeit the match and end up losing 3-0. So let me first start off by saying that the forfeit option should never have been mentioned. Very disingenuous by UEFA. No team at a major tournament wants to forfeit a match, and it's not like it's these guys' fault. It's a medical emergency. No one could have counted for it. You're basically punishing them for their grief, for how they're taking it. And again, any human being would react the way that the Denmark players did when they saw a fallen teammate, a fallen brother considered by some, and obviously someone who was well respected on that team, go down. And basically, again, his heart stopped at one point, almost cost him his life. Why wouldn't you expect these players, to be grieving, to have to find a way to push on and finish out a very high-profile, high-pressured match in front of their home nation, in front of their home supporters? Again, just very disingenuous by UEFA that they would even mention that, the possibility that you would have to forfeit that match and forfeit by a 3-0 scoreline in terms of goal difference at the Euros. That would be huge. It would put them in such a hole. So basically, they told them, you either have to resume today or resume tomorrow. There were no other choices, and that presents a very difficult decision for players who are under a lot of pressure and under a lot of strife and grief to have to make. Unfortunately, the reality of the situation is the format and the scheduling of the Euros, as well as the FIFA World Cup and other major tournaments, doesn't really allow for teams to recover from these types of incidents. The schedule just kind of goes right through to the next portion of the tournament, and there's no real pause either way, especially at the group stage. Basically, Denmark, they didn't have a solution. I wish they would have had one that would have provided them the time necessary for them to recover from this incident, but they basically would have thrown a wrench into the entire tournament schedule if something else had been decided. So basically, the lesson learned for future tournaments would be to have a contingency plan for when matches have to be suspended or for certain incidents such as this. They put Denmark in an incredibly impossible situation where they had to play on, where all they can think about is one of my teammates, one of my brothers, currently dying. They had to play with that thought on their minds. Of course, it was impossible for them to come up with some type of result based on that current situation. This is something to learn from, that FIFA, UEFA, and other major tournaments can find a way to put a plan in place that is a solution for everyone. Teams, I definitely think they would be understanding. You saw Finland, basically the reception they had on the day of that match and following in their next match, basically, tributes from other teams across the tournament for Christian Eriksen. I think players would understand, especially because of that connection at the club level with all of these guys. Yes, some may play on the same national team, but across the majority of the tournament, all these guys have different connections. I'm sure they would be understanding. So there's got to be a plan put in place for this type of situation. For when it happens, you can give teams the necessary time to recover and eventually find a way to continue with those matches at a pace that helps suit them. In the end, I'm so happy that Christian is still with us and so thankful for the medical personnel who were able to help him, all the medical personnel across all levels, not just the soccer, but all sports, for the work that they do, that they have to be perfect at what they do, and they have to do it so quickly. They were able to get it done here. A crisis was averted. In real life, this situation was handled perfectly. But in football life, in football terms, this is a situation that we can learn from and hopefully be more prepared for the next time that it happens. So like I said, we are through the first round of group stage fixtures at Euro 2020. Obviously, I'd love to break down each one individually here, but I've already done that. You can go on the Beautiful Game Network and check out my written recaps. I'm only going to talk about the 5 top matches that I've seen so far that kind of set the stage of the tournament, talk a little bit about some of the bigger names and how they've been doing here. So here we go, the top 5 matches so far from the first round of the group stage fixtures at Euro 2020. Coming in at number 5, I got to go with the opening match of the tournament, and that would be Italy 3, Turkey 0. Italy completely dominated Turkey in this matchup. They played in front of their home fans there in Rome. They had some of their top players like Ciro Immobile and Lorenzo Insigne get on the score sheet. And again, they dominated a defense that was one of the best during qualifying. I believe Turkey only conceded 3 goals during that period, and they didn't look anything like that in this matchup. Italy's offense was just so dynamic. That's the difference between this Italian team and some of the past iterations. They've got the offense now paired with the defense. We then saw that in their 3-0 victory over Switzerland about a week or so later. So again, they've looked completely dominant on both sides of the ball, but this offense that is just so dynamic, has so much pace and so much precision. It's a different part of Italy than we've seen in the past. In the opening stage of that tournament, obviously there's a lot of goodwill. You're fired up. It's the first match, but we saw it once again in the second match. So now we know Italy, not really just a dark horse anymore to win this whole thing. they got to be considered one of the favorites. Next up at number 4, I got to go with Spain 0, Sweden 0. The first goalless draw at Euro 2020. However, this was one of the most one-sided matches, at least from a possession standpoint. Spain controlled the ball 75% of the time, and they held Sweden to 0 shots on target. However, they weren't able to create many chances with that possession. The ones that they did, they got saved. You had Alvaro Morata there, missing a glorious chance in the first half. He didn't look very good. And Spain don't really have a backup option to replace him with. They kind of had to go back to their old false 9 ways there a little bit later on in the second half, and they just didn't have any answers. You know, Sweden, they're not a terrible team defensively, but Spain should have found a way with how much they were dominating and how much they had the ball to put at least one goal in the back of the net. They weren't able to do so. They put themselves behind the 8 ball a little bit in that group. And yeah, they're going to have to come up with some different ways to score. Obviously, the best way for them to do that is they're going to have to pass around their opponent and try to break through up the middle with a nice through ball. They can't really cross balls into the box, but still, they've got to find a better way to put some goals up there. Spain, obviously, good defensive performance. 0 shots on target for their opponent. Very good. But yeah, not breaking through, kind of showing a little bit of the problems that they'd shown before Euro 2020 and that what people expected for them. We'll have to see if they can make adjustments. Okay, coming in at number 3, I went with England 1, Croatia 0. English manager Gareth Southgate made a lot of interesting choices for his starting 11. He installed Kieran Trippier, a right back, at left back. He didn't even put Jadon Sancho in the team. I know he's currently maybe in contract talks with Manchester United, but still probably should have been at least on the bench, if not in the starting 11. And then he installed 2 holding midfielders, but that ended up being his best decision as Leeds United. Calvin Phillips completely bossed the game from that position. He was man of the match, and he also teed up Raheem Sterling for the game's only goal. England were able to hold on. They kept a clean sheet. Harry Kane wasn't really involved on the day, but still they were able to get performances from likes of Phil Foden, getting Sterling with the goal, and a lot of other different performances as well. That's going to be the key for England going forward. They kind of really showed their depth in this match, kind of exercised a little bit of those demons from their loss in the semifinals of the 2018 World Cup to Croatia. Croatia had a few chances in this match, but at the end of the day, England pretty much controlled things from start to finish. And yeah, they got the 1 goal. That's all they needed. So maybe not the most impressive performance from England, but they really showcased their depth and what they're able to do. And there were a lot of bright performances, especially there by Phillips. Tremendous performance by him. May have made some more money here coming up, either with Leeds or potentially, you know, somebody buying them up here in the summer. But again, England got things done. This was the toughest match in their group, and they came away with 3 points. Next up at number 2 was a match that these guys were involved in. And that, of course, would be Netherlands 3, Ukraine 2. Easily the most entertaining match so far at Euro 2020. The Netherlands, they were up 2-0. They were flying high, seemed to be running away with it. But then you had that beautiful effort from Yarmolenko that curled in the top left corner of the net. And then Ukraine found the equalizer just a few minutes later. Frank de Boer's tactics once again coming into question, that they weren't able to control that lead that they had, and they let Ukraine back in it. They just conceded way too much space to the opposition. But at the end of the day, what was really showcased in this match was just the ferocious intensity and just the pace that Netherlands have, especially on the outside. They were able to come up with that late goal for the 3-2 win. So I was very impressed with that side of the Netherlands. They've got a lot of different guys with a lot of pace and who can cause a lot of chaos for opposing defenses. But at the end of the day, now I know they didn't have Matthijs de Ligt back there on defense, but still, man, they got to find a better way to kind of close things down back there, especially with that 2-goal lead that they had. Very impressed with Ukraine going forward. Something to look out for. Maybe we kind of underestimated them a little bit. They could be one of those teams that either qualifies in second or in third from their group, but still, very entertaining match. Haven't really seen a match so far that's got this amount of goals. And yeah, Netherlands come on top. They're going to be the most wild card type team of this tournament. You don't know what you're going to get from them, but I can guarantee it'll be at least an entertaining match. But coming in at number 1, there's no other choice. The very last match of the first round of group stage fixtures at Euro 2020. And that, of course, would be France 1, Germany 0. Did it live up to the hype? Probably not. But still, there were a lot of great moments of athleticism, instinct, and overall, it was just one big chess match. You had Kylian Mbappe out there just having a day, running roughshod over that German defense. His presence there in the box is what kind of pressured Matt Hummels into making that mistake and creating that own goal, which, by the way, first ever own goal conceded by Germany at the Euros in their history. Amazing to think of that type of stat. And at the end of the day, France, Paul Pogba, oh my goodness, completely different player, completely bossed the game from that position, was playing beautiful balls in the box, left and right. Of course, right by his side, you got N'Golo Kante doing his thing. I did think that Germany played pretty well in this match. I thought, guys like Toni Kroos were able to put together a couple of chances. They had opportunities to tie up this match. They just couldn't get it done because they just don't have that presence in front of the net. They don't have that main striker that can just bang in the goals left and right. They don't really have a target man there. And all these other types of creative midfielders, they're not finding the space or creating the space necessary to get off the shot. So in the end of the day, it's a result that I think people expected, even though Germany played pretty well. France were the more deserving team on this day and were able to get things done. Could they have been more aggressive going forward and played more attractive football? Yes, of course. But at the end of the day, this is a results-driven tournament. You got to pick up the 3 points when you can. And France were able to dominate there in the later stages and hold on there for the victory. So again, historic matchup. I mean, you could write a book just on these two teams alone. And at the end of the day, France came out on top and started their quest to win Euro 2020 with the win. So those are some matches that stood out to me from the first round of group stage fixtures at Euro 2020. Looking forward to the next couple rounds. And I think next week, the group stage wraps up and it kind of perfectly coincides with when this show airs. So I'll recap the group stage at that point on next week's episode, talk about some of the surprising teams that moved on, some of the teams that were expected, and of course, some of those teams that crashed out early. But now I want to get into some of the other major tournaments going on at the international level right now during this time. And I want to start off by talking about Copa America. That tournament kicked off this past Sunday with the host nation Brazil dominating Venezuela in a 3-0 victory. I believe Neymar scored in that match as well. Then you move on, you had Colombia winning a very gritty affair versus Ecuador 1-0. The goal came on a beautiful training ground routine on a free kick that Colombia were able to convert. They were able then to hold on to the victory. Then you kind of had the high-profile matchup of Argentina versus Chile. Lionel Messi, once again, beautiful free kick, curling it perfectly the top part of the net. We thought Argentina were able to find a way to win this match, but they once again conceded to Chile. They were able to pick up a goal off of a rebound from a penalty. And then this is the same old story. Messi's teammates struggling to convert their chances. He did a great job of kind of dispersing the ball left and right and setting up his teammates, but they just couldn't get it done. They ended up drawing that match 1-1. Then lastly, you had Paraguay beat Bolivia 3-1. There's other matchups going on during this taping. I'm going to put up a few scores here down below. Matches are going on here through the weekend. Interesting part of this tournament that there's 5 teams per group. 4 of the top 5 teams will move on to the quarterfinals. So there's an excellent opportunity still to move on, but obviously you want the best matchup for your team. Brazil, they've looked the best, obviously, in World Cup qualifying, also here in Copa America. We haven't had really that second team kind of step up. I'm waiting for Argentina. I'm waiting for Colombia. Colombia gets it done here. Argentina, not so much, but we know that they have the talent to do so. Still waiting on a couple teams. I know Uruguay hadn't played yet as of this taping, but still, it's a wide open Copa America. I think in terms of the overall aspect of it, I would install Brazil as the favorites, but I just don't think they've faced a team when they're playing their best ball yet. So we'll have to see how things play out. Interesting start, though, to Copa America. You definitely want to keep a watch on this. I know it's not as quite like the Euros, but the games have been on Fox, have been very entertaining. Yeah, some interesting results here at the early stages. The other major soccer going on at the international level was the finish of the second round of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. We now know the final 3 teams who will be joining the likes of Mexico and the U.S. in that final octagon for those World Cup qualifying spots in CONCACAF. El Salvador, they beat St. Kitts and Nevis 6-0 over 2 legs. Very comfortable win there. Congrats, obviously, of course, to former St. Louis FC player Joaquin Rivas for helping lead his team there to the final round of World Cup qualifying. Joining them will be Canada, who beat Haiti 4-0 over 2 legs, including one of the worst own goals that you'll ever see. Just go up and look it up on YouTube or something. The Haitian goalkeeper. I'm not saying that there's match fixing involved here, but if there was a situation like that, this type of goal would be involved. It was that bad. Just go and look it up. And then lastly, you had Panama holding on to beat Curacao there 2-1 over 2 legs. They tied 0-0 there in the second leg, but they were able to get it done and they were able to move on. Schedule's already out. U.S., I believe, is facing El Salvador in their first matchup. And just kind of looking at their schedule, it's going to be tough World Cup qualifying still. I think the play here in CONCACAF has gotten better. And obviously, you know, last time out, the U.S. didn't qualify. So this is a true test to see if they've learned from their mistakes. Looking ahead, though, to those final 3 fixtures, if the U.S. were still in the mix for a qualifying spot, at Mexico, I believe home against Canada, though I'm not quite sure about that second game, and then at Costa Rica. We've got to ensure that we have wrapped up qualifying by that point. I do not want to get in a situation where we're fighting for a spot and you have to play the 2 toughest teams in your group on the road, especially with Mexico, man. By that time, U.S., who knows? Maybe we beat them in the Gold Cup final. Maybe we beat them somewhere else. We beat them in qualifying at home. They're going to be mad. And playing them at Azteca Stadium in that type of situation, and we might be fighting for a playoff spot, ooh, do not want to do that. So my advice would be wrap up qualifying before that point. So we'll have to see. But again, very exciting to see that we're at the final stage of World Cup qualifying. Obviously, we're just a little bit more than a year away from the 2022 World Cup. But yeah, important time right now for the U.S. men's national team. We know now the path forward to qualifying for that World Cup. Okay, let's move into some soccer in America talk. I'm going to start off with MLS and one quick news story before I get to the action on the pitch. Unfortunately, an injury situation here with Atlanta United FC's midfielder Emerson Hyndman. It was announced by the club this week that he had torn his ACL in his right knee and he's going to be out for the remainder of the season. Hyndman, he had 1 goal and 1 assist already in 7 matches so far this season and really been growing into his own. He kind of got a lot of hype when he initially came into Atlanta. He's been a part of that midfield here for the past few seasons. It's going to be interesting to see how Atlanta adjusts to that. Obviously, last year they had to deal with Joseph Martinez and his injury to his ACL. Now they've got him in here. Very unfortunate situation. Hoping for a full recovery for him. Yeah, interesting to see going forward how Atlanta adjusts to that and how they look here over the next few weeks. As far as action on the pitch, like I mentioned on last week's episode, there was only 1 match to watch in MLS last weekend, and that was Austin FC versus Sporting Kansas City. Austin were able to hold on for a 1-1 draw versus Sporting KC, as Kansas City, they had 32 shots in this match. They were 2 off of their all-time record for shots in a single match. Austin were able to hold down. They got a great performance from goalkeeper Brad Stover, who was able to have 9 saves in this match. Austin actually had a couple of chances to win it here. They just weren't able to convert later on. Still an impressive result, I would say, for them, considering how much they were under pressure by Sporting KC. You have to think it's disappointing that they weren't able to get the 3 points at home. Very entertaining match. At the end of the day, Austin, I would think, would be the luckier team here, or at least the team that feels better going away here with a point. But still, it was the only match, but it was an entertaining one. And at the end of the day, both teams share the point. So while it was nice to focus on a couple teams last weekend in MLS, I'm really looking forward to a full slate of matches upcoming here this weekend. Some of them that I'm looking forward to, you got NYCFC versus New England Revolution. NYCFC been one of the more high-scoring teams in MLS, especially in the Eastern Conference. Going up against the first-place team there in New England should be a lot of goals. Then you've got the high-profile matchup, right? LA Galaxy versus Seattle Sounders FC. We saw Seattle kind of end the Galaxy's run early on in the season when they got off to that great start. Again, 2 high-profile teams, 2 highly offensive teams. Should be an exciting matchup once again between those 2 sides. The other 2 matchups I'm interested in, you got Portland Timbers hosting Sporting KC. Should be a fun one there. And then in the Eastern Conference, you got Atlanta United FC hosting the Philadelphia Union. Again, like I said, we have to see how Atlanta adjusts to the Hyndman injury. And then, of course, you got Philadelphia. They got on a run after they had been eliminated from the CONCACAF Champions League. They seem to regain their form, and they've been one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference since. So we'll see if they'll be able to continue that run here this weekend. But still, very exciting. MLS back, full slate of matches this weekend. We've also got some midweek fixtures coming up next week that I'll get to on next week's episode. Next up, moving on to women's soccer. I want to start off with the U.S. women's national team. They've been in action over the past week. They featured in 3 matches as a part of their summer soccer series, and they won each of those matches via shutout. It started with a 1-0 victory over Portugal on a goal late from Sam Ewis. They then went on to beat Jamaica 4-0, getting goals from 4 different players. And then they wrapped things up this week with a 2-0 victory over Nigeria, with either goal coming in stoppage time in either half. The next match for the U.S. women's national team is a pair of matches versus their rivals Mexico at the beginning of July, which will be their final tune-up before the Olympics. Head coach Vlatko Andonovski is expected to announce his Olympic roster beforehand. And he's going to have a tough decision, right? A lot of players in form, again, especially in that Jamaica match when you had 4 different goal scorers. I know Alex Morgan was involved there. There's going to be some tough decisions. You also have to figure in Tobin Heath, who has been out with her long-term injury and her recovery. She's going to be able to be back in time for this roster. Obviously, there are a lot of players who could step up and kind of fill that void. But right now, in terms of the veterans, in terms of the players, in their prime and some of the younger players, it's such a difficult decision to see who will be going on to play for the U.S. at the Olympics. But still, good to see the U.S. women continuing to be strong. I know the offense took a while to get going in some of these matches, especially in the Portugal match and a little bit there in the Nigeria match. But still, they got things done. The defense held firm, as it usually does. So there's a lot of still positive takeaways to come away with here with the U.S. women's national team as they prepare for the Olympics. Next up, I really wanted to highlight this story because I think this is something that every soccer team should be doing, especially if they have a partnership with a women's team. For the first time ever, OL Reign and Seattle Sounders FC will be hosting a doubleheader on August 29th versus their Portland rivals. You're going to have OL Reign versus Portland Timbers FC in the afternoon, and then the nightcap, you'll have Seattle Sounders FC versus Portland Timbers. Both those matches will be played at the home of the Sounders there, Lumen Field in Seattle, also home to Seahawks. But still, really cool opportunity for the women's team to kind of get this focus, to get this pub, and to play at the Sounders home stadium. Hopefully they're going to have a big crowd. I know that the ticket sales for that day, one ticket will get you into both matches. I don't know why more teams do this. You see so many different connections with teams from the NWSL and from MLS. This is what needs to happen. If you want to promote the game, especially on the women's side, find a way to combine with the men's team and have a way to kind of showcase both clubs, get as many people as you can to these matches. I really like that ticket deal, the one ticket for both matches. I just think this is a really cool promotion. Both matches will be featured on TV. So yeah, looking forward to that here in a couple months to see how the crowds are at that match, what the reception is, and if this is an idea that can be built upon. But let's focus on some NWSL matches that will actually be happening this weekend. We know that the league was off altogether last week due to the international break, but now everybody's back, and I'm looking forward to some matches here this weekend. Starting off with North Carolina Courage versus OL Reign. We're still waiting on some of those players to join up with the Reign, some of those international players. We know that Rose Lavelle has featured the past couple of matches for the Reign. We'll see how they match up versus the Courage and all of that offensive firepower that they've got. Then you've got Racing Louisville FC versus the Houston Dash. The Dash have been playing much better here over their past couple matches. Then you got Racing Louisville FC, who either seem to be scoring a lot of goals or conceding a lot of goals. So I think that this match will be a fun one to watch here this weekend. And then lastly, Orlando Pride, still in first place. They'll be going up against New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC. I think that'll be a tightly contested matchup. Not a lot of goals here in this one. I think both teams are pretty good defensively. We'll have to see if the Pride can continue holding on to that top spot in the NWSL. But they're back this weekend. It was a good international break. We're looking forward to restarting the league here this weekend and seeing how all those teams fare. Okay, now let's get to what was another busy week in the USL Championship. Much like the previous week, we had weekend fixtures, we had midweek fixtures, and of course, then we'll look ahead to this upcoming weekend. So let's start with last weekend's results that caught my eye. We had Pittsburgh Riverhounds SC drawing with the Miami FC 1-1. Russell Cicerone, again, former St. Louis FC player. He's been on a tear. He scored once again in this match, but they weren't able to hold on and had to settle for a draw versus Miami. Louisville City FC, they bounced back after a little bit of a tough stretch. They beat Memphis 901 FC by a score of 3-0. Louisville scored all three of those goals after Memphis went down to 10 men, however. Then you had Birmingham Legion FC, who've been at the top there, at least near the top of the Central Division. At the time, they extended their winning streak to 4 matches after they beat Oklahoma City Energy FC by a score of 2-1. And lastly, this was a match that had 2 teams that we still have a lot of questions about, Charlotte Independence versus Hartford Athletic. And that match finished with Charlotte winning 3-2 with all 5 goals coming in the second half. It was a tremendous watch just to watch the highlights there from that match and see, again, the back and forth, Charlotte able to complete that comeback there at the end. Still got a lot of questions about both of those teams. We had said that Hartford, they hadn't played the top teams yet in their group. This was their first test, and Charlotte the ones that came out on top and came away with the victory. Then, of course, we move into the midweek results. I want to start off by talking about Pittsburgh beating Indy 11 1-0, which led to the firing of head coach Martin Rennie. I'm not surprised by this. I mean, you can see the writing on the wall here with their past few results. When you look at their offseason, when you sell a guy like Tyler Pashner, when you sell a guy like, I believe, goalkeeper Evan Newton, and when you lose some of the other offensive players that you have, you're going to have to expect a drop-off. And that's been the problem with Indy so far this season. They just don't have the quality that they had in previous seasons. I don't know if it's so much about the manager. It's just that all of those players that they lost. Pittsburgh able to bounce back from that draw versus Miami and pick up the win here. Then you just had a couple of wild 4-3 results. The first one was out west. That was Las Vegas Lights beating LA Galaxy 2. I believe LA Galaxy's Paul Judd scored his first career professional hat trick in that match, but it was not enough. Las Vegas was able to pick up the W there. Then the other one happened in the Central Division. You had FC Tulsa. Joaquin Rivas came back, was able to score a goal. Again, they were able to beat Sporting Kansas City 2 by that scoreline of 4-3. Elsewhere in that division, Louisville City FC kept up their fine form. They stopped Birmingham Legion FC's winning streak there at 4. by beating them by a score of 2-0. And then lastly, you had the Memphis versus Atlanta United 2 matchup. It was really unfortunate to see former St. Louis FC goalkeeper John Berner go down with an injury, and they had to rely on, at least Memphis had to rely on, one of their outfield players. It would be St. Louis and Mark Sabers, who had to go in net, and he had to come up with a couple saves, and Memphis were able to hold on for the 1-0 victory. Tremendous effort there by Memphis to adjust to that type of situation, for Mark to step in on goal and at least make one really impressive save, especially for an outfield player. Also had another one that he had to make there late on in that match. So some real crazy results and some teams that bounced back. A lot of defensive issues there for some of those clubs. Again, like I keep saying, that's Central Division. You never know what you're going to get with those types of results. It seems like Louisville have bounced back a little bit. Birmingham's still one of those top teams, but now the FC Tulsa are back to full force. They're going to be a thing. A lot of craziness going on there out west. Again, you got to stay up late for those West USL Championship matches because you're always going to get one of those 4-3 type of results. This time it was Vegas and LA. Who knows who it could be next time around. So now, of course, lastly, we look ahead to this weekend and the set of fixtures that are coming up. Give me Tampa Bay Rowdies versus Pittsburgh. We saw Tampa Bay bounce back last week with the win over Loudoun United. Can they keep things going against Pittsburgh? It seems like they flip-flop on their results from match to match. We'll see if they can come up with a little bit more consistency. But yeah, these are kind of two blue bloods there of the Eastern Conference going at it. Big matchup in the Central Division, Louisville versus FC Tulsa. Should be a high-scoring affair. Looking forward to that one. Then also you've got Birmingham in action versus Austin Bold FC, who've actually been in quite good form over these past few matchups, so it'll be a pretty good test there for Birmingham. And lastly, got to pick out a matchup out west, and I'm going with Oakland Roots SC hosting Sacramento Republic FC. That's because this will be Oakland's first home match this season, their first in the USL Championship. Very exciting times out there for them. We'll have to see how they do versus Sacramento. Both those teams still trying to find their ground there in their division. Opportunity to pick up 3 points. And yeah, again, very exciting opportunity there for Oakland and their fans to celebrate opening up at home this season. Okay, now it's time to get into the bevy of St. Louis soccer news from this past week. I want to start off with an update from St. Louis City SC. They unveiled the seat designs inside that brand new stadium. Got that really cool, again, city red and navy blue, as well as kind of that checkerboard pattern that we've seen with Purina being the sponsor. Things look really great. Again, exciting times and continuing development there at the stadium. But they also made a couple of hirings, a couple of announcements there, not so much on the football side of things, but on the experience and on some of the behind-the-scenes things there with the club. Obviously, the big one that I think fans are really going to enjoy, and that would be the announcement of a flavor officer. We know Guy Fieri is the mayor of Flavortown, so I don't know where flavor officer falls in line there with that ranking, but still very exciting to see that local chef Gerard Kraft is going to be a part of the effort inside the stadium with the food and drink experience for the fans, which it seems like it's going to be fan-led. We saw the club announce that you can go online and kind of make your suggestions for what food options and beverage options should be at the stadium, and that's obviously a home run win there. St. Louis has got a great scene of food and drinks all around the city, all around the outside area as well. Got to take advantage of that. Got to put up a lot of those different stands there at the stadium. I mean, the possibilities are endless for what you can do. So again, looking forward to see what fans come up with. I'm sure the menu and beverages are going to be exquisite. It's going to be a great experience there at these upcoming matches for St. Louis City SC. They've really focused on the fan experience here initially, and they're going to continue to do that. And again, just very exciting time to see what they'll do next. Okay, now let's get into some action on the pitch from the past week. I'm going to start off with St. Louis Scott Gallagher, who have extended their unbeaten run in USL 2 to 5 matches after they picked up a draw and a win over this past week. It started with a 1-1 draw last Saturday versus Chicago FC United. It was the first points that Chicago had dropped all season. They were the better team there in the first half. They took the lead, but St. Louis Scott Gallagher came roaring back right out of the gate of that second half. Lucas Hummel scoring the goal on assist from Jack Lynn. They had some chances late on to actually win that match, but they weren't able to get it done. But still an impressive point picked up. Let's start there. I kind of want to break down each one of these matches individually. I talked to Lucas after the match about his performance, about the team performance versus a very tough Chicago team, and this is what he had to say.
They're a good team. I thought the weather conditions played a factor, but they were also playing the same game as well in the same conditions. We did break down defensively, right before the water break there. But I thought after the water break, we started playing a little bit better. We didn't get any chances, but we were just saying get to half, get to half. In the locker room, Coach Kelly, Coach Trichu, and Luis, they got on us and motivated us and told us, we can go out there and win this game if we bring more energy than them. And right out of the get-go, we got a chance and tied it up, thankfully. Jack gave a good pass, and I was able to finish it off, right place at the right time. But I'm pleased with the point. I really am. The Indiana run, that was great, and it was great to be a part of. But I was so ready to get back out here. I love this club. I love this facility. I love playing here. Play here all my life. I played with all these guys when I was 14, and I really do think we really got the full band back together, and we're starting to get results, no doubt.
SLSG's next match then was this past Wednesday when they were able to defeat Kaw Valley FC by a score of 2-1. Danny Goddard and Chris Brook were the goal scorers on the night, both of which were just beautiful curling efforts in the top corners of the net. They actually assisted one another on those goals. Kaw Valley were able to pull one back there in the second half, but St. Louis Scott Gallagher were able to hold on to win that match. Patrick Schulte, once again, coming up with some huge saves. He had some huge saves in both matches, but here he was able to preserve the full 3 points for St. Louis Scott Gallagher. I talked to Chris here after the match, as well as head coach Steve Trishu, about the team's form during this unbeaten run, about the match itself and the goals, and just going forward, how they can want to continue on with this season.
I wanted to rest some guys. A lot of guys have been doing a lot of minutes, and so did a little rotation, But Danny Goddard and Jack Wagner for 2 came in and did really well. And it's a good team effort. I thought the 2 goals we scored are just, unbelievable goals. But I thought we let them back into the game a little bit too much at times. When we came on in the second half, I thought we did really well. We created a lot of chances, just couldn't score. But in the end, it's a good win for the guys, and they're happy about it. And now we just turn our attention to Saturday.
Yeah, so on the one with Danny, it's an incredible strike by him. Kyle threw it way over it in the sideline. I was surprised it got to me, but it got to Danny. He did all of it on that one. And then he set me up. I just knew the defender was going to commit hard to my right because I had a lot of space, just brought it back to my left, and it's a sweet strike. So we're hoping to keep this unbeaten streak going, and I think we have a good chance of doing that on Saturday against Green Bay. It's an opponent that, we tied them when we went there a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't, it didn't sit right with us, so we're going to be coming out with a fire on Saturday.
So exciting times for St. Louis Scott Gallagher. The defense has been solid pretty much the whole season, but the offense has really picked things up here over these past few matches. And yeah, again, I know it's great to be unbeaten, but wins are much sweeter than ties. They've kind of closed the gap a little bit between them and Chicago. Who knows? Maybe they can make a late playoff push here at the end of the season. Their last home match is tomorrow night. They'll be taking on Green Bay Voyagers before their last 4 matches will be on the road. So important to get out to the soccer park and support this team and their last home match. Again, who knows how the season could finish up, but you can definitely see the development of this team, of the different players on it. Again, just very exciting to watch this type of level of soccer here, USL 2, locally at the soccer park. So again, good things right now from St. Louis Scott Gallagher. We'll see if they'll be able to continue this role tomorrow night. Okay, now I want to get to the 2 local women's teams who have been in action here over the past couple weeks. I want to start off with Fire and Ice and this past weekend that they had. It started with a 1-1 draw versus the Dayton Dutch Lions. You had Mackenzie Littinger from SIUE getting on the score sheet for Fire and Ice, but they weren't able to come up with the win there. They then followed that up. I was able to attend the match there on Sunday afternoon where they lost 3-0 to FC Pride. It was a really impressive performance by the Pride. They had a lot of players that were tough to mark, which included Maya Watford, easily the player of the match. She scored one of the goals. She assisted on the 2 other ones. There were still a lot of positives to take away from this match for Fire and Ice, especially considering the circumstances. And I talked a little bit with head coach Lindsay Eversmeyer about all of that. And here's what she had to say.
The one thing is that when we're down at any point in time, our girls always continue to play. They don't ever slow down and stop. So they keep fighting and they keep pushing through it all. So I can't really fault them from that. And we have a couple injuries, we have some girls that were out. It could have been better, yes, but playing a back-to-back game against a solid team, and we played yesterday against a really, really good team, put a lot of effort in, and that was last night at 7 o'clock, so they didn't even get a big turnaround time with rest. So, yeah, I think today, after everything, it was, could be better, but I'm still happy that they fought through it to the end.
On the flip side, the St. Louis Lions, they only had 1 match this past weekend. It was a 6-1 loss versus the Dayton Dutch Lions. That would, of course, lead us to this past Wednesday when Fire and Ice and St. Louis Lions met for the first time in this local derby this season. That would be a 2-0 decision that went towards Fire and Ice. They got goals from Brianna Hatfield and Nicole Brees to break up their 2-game skid and to get back in the win column. Much improved performance here by the Lions. You can definitely see the development and improvement from week to week. There's still a lot of kinks that they have to work out, but this was a very spirited performance that kept the match close here. Good for Fire and Ice to get back on the score sheet. And yeah, hoping that the Lions can come up with their first points soon and continue their development here in this season. The next matchup between those two teams will take place on June 30th with the Lions hosting. But as far as this weekend is concerned, Fire and Ice only have one match, which is on Saturday night when they host the Columbus Eagles. As far as the Lions are concerned, they have two matches this weekend. They will travel on Saturday to take on the Dayton Dutch Lions before coming home on Sunday to take on the Columbus Eagles as well. So again, hoping for some development, hopefully some points here soon for the Lions, for Fire and Ice to get back in the win column. We'll see if they can continue that momentum here in the season. But still, very cool time to have both of these teams in action. Again, really cool to see them face off against each other. It was a great crowd there on Wednesday night. Let's hope to continue that support and see how these two teams end up with this season. So that's going to do it for this 30th episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, apologies. It's been a hectic week. A lot of soccer going on. Got the guest situation and some things on my end personally. It looks like it's going to be another one of those crazy weeks next week, but I'm hoping to bring in a guest for next week's show. And of course, there'll be more post-game sound from some of the matches that I've attended. I'll be at the Gallagher match on Saturday, hoping to get out to Lions match on Sunday and cover that as well. So I'll have that post-game sound for you for next week, as well as the coverage of all that is going on, Euro 2020, all the soccer going on in the U.S., and anything else that comes to mind. So again, looking forward to talking with you all again here next week. Have a good weekend and enjoy all of the soccer.